Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech Over Coffee. I'm Dave.
And I'm Jeremy.
We're excited that you joined us for this podcast. We'd especially like to thank Chipola College for sponsoring this podcast. And we enjoy filming here on campus in Marianna, Florida at the main location of Chipola College. We're excited to be at the studio. This is a place where we get a chance to hang out and share ideas.
It's where the magic happens.
That's right. And our magic often focuses on technology, business, you name it. We try to bring pertinent and timely topics to our podcast to share those with you. And we also want to thank Ben. Ben is a founding colleague with us as well, and he'll be back in the loop. He'll continue the journey with us. So today we have Jeremy and myself. And what do you have in store for us today, Jeremy?
So today I was kind of thinking we should focus a little bit on the internet, specifically space internet, satellite internet to be exact. So, normally everybody gets their internet from like a cable in the ground, and it comes into your house and you have some normal speed that everyone would expect. Me personally, it's way too slow at my house because it's like most Americans, not so great. But we have a few companies out there that are focusing on bringing low cost, very high end internet to the masses.
Yeah, internet's one of those things, almost like a utility that you expect to have water, you expect to have electricity, and you need internet to function, especially in this time when we have these challenges that we're faced and we're having more stuff online. The internet becomes even more important. So the internet we see will become more of a foundation of our everyday life, of the business environment. So it's that technology that you will probably someday not even talk about, but we're kind of getting that in place now with some of the business activities.
Yeah, so I mean, the internet is this thing that's relatively new, but I mean, in the scheme of it all, right? Electricity is hundreds of years old. The internet is, a few decades. But it's so insanely important because of the way it lets people connect. And we have companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin that are actually out there trying to reduce the cost of internet and bring it to a larger number of people.
So, boy, quite a few good points there, Jeremy. The thought of internet and being creative, of providing internet services in better ways, different ways to consumers, that's important, that's key, and that's going to be a goal where, someday there'll be a whole generation of people, as we were talking earlier, that'll just use the internet and will be thinking, well, you had to pay for that or you actually had to plug in somewhere. And then the thought of providing that to the masses, it really becomes almost a right. Someone should have proper utilities just to live in the world today. You need to have, electricity. You should have clean water, and you almost need internet to be able to function, to be able to stay in tune with current events. So to provide internet through space activities, if you will, to kind of have it blanket the Earth is a great way to make sure it's available to
Right.
people throughout the world.
Because currently, I mean, the way people normally get internet is through like an access point. It's you have to have like a relatively close proximity to certain positions that have like access to the relays that make the internet really work. And for some people that live far out into a desert or into the jungle or these places that don't have access to that kind of infrastructure, you have places in all over the world, really, in the United States to Africa, where people don't have access to even the most basic internet. So to be able to avoid all of these like ground level terrestrial problems that you could have by instead using satellites up in the sky. You just beam it down, and as long as you have an access point, you have internet. Currently, that's being provided by a couple companies. There's HughesNet and Viasat are the two main competitors in the satellite internet era. But the way that they function is on these large geostationary satellites. So they throw up two or three big expensive satellites and they basically cover these certain regions, where SpaceX has a completely different revolutionary idea, which is throwing up hundreds of even thousands of satellites. They're aiming for somewhere around 12,000 satellites to blanket the entire Earth. That allows this constellation to give access to every single place on the planet.
So I've had a chance to, and you probably have as well, utilize satellite internet providers, and it is reminds me of the old dial-up days. Not that bad, but it's slow.
it's
and
rough.
it's intermittent. You can't
And
always rely on it. And if you're in research in remote places, say you can't always get a good signal. So to be able to have a consistent signal, to have more access points, is a great way to look at it. And you mentioned these remote areas. I know there's a lot of research being done in Antarctica. So someday I would like to
Right.
utilize some satellite internet in Antarctica on a research study. That would be fun.
Go out on a cruise and have high-speed internet the whole way.
Oh, yes.
Because you could have a satellite connection right on that boat, right up until you get to Antarctica, and it's like, hey, we've got it ready to go for you.
You've never lost connection. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, and it's supposed to be done through, I believe, phased arrays. So you actually have the satellites passing by each other and seamlessly transitioning. So you don't have this like dropped connection problem. And the more satellites you have, the more coverage there is. And the more satellites you have, the larger the bandwidth is available as well. And that's something that the current satellite internet kind of suffers from, is that they don't have the same bandwidth and like data throughput. You end up being able to run for 100 gigabits, and then they shut you down to below dial-up speeds where you basically can't do anything. And that's just kind of the same problem that you have with a lot of terrestrial internet too, is that even if you have a gigabit connection from Comcast or something like that, you still might have a data cap that once you get to that point, you don't really have that gigabit speed anymore. And they really nickel and dime people, because it's the same thing with the cell phone companies. You have Verizon, you have T-Mobile, all of them claim to have unlimited internet, but in the end it stops at 25, and then you might be able to use more, but the reality is that at the speed, even if you downloaded every single minute of every single day, you wouldn't break a few hundred gigabytes, and that's kind of a problem.
So most certainly they say it's unlimited. They provide access. It's not consistent. And you mentioned about sometimes you could lose that access. That always seems to happen to me when I just have that project
Yeah.
ready to submit, and all of a sudden it kind of fades out. And just fortunately, hopefully, I saved that project. But these companies right today with being able to monopolize, being able to charge a hefty price, not having as much competition. Elon Musk is trying to provide more competition for internet, which we salute. The ability to control your download speed. They'll say, well, it's unlimited because you can download what you want, but then it's hard to upload. So they kind of will not trick you, but the fine print is where the details are.
And
So
very often they do that, where you might get 25 megabits download, but you'll only get 5 megabit upload or something like that. So you might be able to download a large project, but there's no way you're going to be able to upload it in time.
that's right. So Elon Musk, wow, what a creative pioneer. You know, we've talked about him many weeks. You know, he
We
really
talk about him a lot. He's a pretty inspirational individual, in my opinion.
you read in the history books about Henry Ford and Bill Gates and others. Elon Musk is someone that the history books may look back on. He's changing the landscape wherever he can. He has an interest in. It seems like he's impacting it. So with space travel,
Yeah.
with getting the contract with NASA to provide human travel,
Right.
to the moon,
I
to the
believe
space station.
they got the second largest contract compared to, I can't remember what it is. It's the standby rocket company that's been doing NASA launches forever. So it's like, of course, they're going to get the largest contract, but SpaceX comes in right second, and yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They're very economical, and of course, NASA and the U.S. government isn't going to go with this new guy immediately. They're going to make sure that it can be done and they can, prove themselves.
And to think of that vision that Elon had with the thought of getting the contract, obviously the focus is on safe human travel to the space station, and then to have the next man on the moon, the first woman on the moon as astronauts coming up soon. But to get that contract and then to say, hey, I can leverage this ability, this technology, these important steps with putting internet out there and just putting a whole different business model out there for the public. And here in his interviews, we've talked about this before, Jeremy, that when they talk about deep space travel or these neat things, mining asteroids, he just keeps it simple that when we can reuse rockets and boosters, that's how we're going to be able to kind of push ourselves into deep space. And to see that launch, was it with Doug and Bob?
Yeah.
So when they went to the space station, and to see that booster land on that robotic ship in the middle of the Indian Ocean, if that's correct.
Lands on a drone ship.
It's
It's impressive.
It was. Oh, is there a word that even describes it? It was perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's amazing how well they've been able to establish in my opinion, dominance in this rocket industry. That they have these smart rockets that are able to not only take people up to the space station, but then come back, land itself, and with these Starlink launches, they're really being able to prove themselves. They're able to go out, drop these satellites in this low Earth orbit, and they've actually reused the most recent rocket for the Starlink launch. I believe it was 6 times they've reused that booster, and then the fairings that hold the satellites themselves, they've reused twice. So depending on the situation, they're able to. I mean, I don't know how many times they're going to be able to reuse those rockets. It's insane.
And then to think about the internet thought of providing that as a service with these smaller satellites, think about what Jeremy was saying earlier with these larger first generation satellites. They were huge, they were expensive, there's only so many of them, you'd lose signal. Now if they just kind of blanket the Earth or blanket whatever planet that we're looking to provide that access point to, it really, you can see, serves many important points. One is, where's the next Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Henry Ford going to come from? It may not be in the U.S. It could be somewhere throughout the global marketplace. And they need internet. They need access to important information so they can research, they can study, and they can follow their passion. That's something that we really champion here in the Western marketplace, the ability to research and follow our passion and look at ideas. So providing internet access across the globe will help accomplish that.
Yeah, and I mean, it might be from an affordable standpoint, but it's not like they're not going to make money. They're going to make an incredible amount of money from this, because to be this high-speed internet that is accessible in all of these regions that some people, they don't even have a competition point. The current telecommunications companies that provide internet really have no competition in most areas. It's generally, you'll have Comcast in this region, you'll have AT&T in this other. It's these companies break out their little areas and they don't bother moving into others because there's so much capital output that they have to do to create these internet connections for everyone, that they're just not willing to do it because it's not going to make them enough money. And where SpaceX and Elon Musk see this opportunity where it's like, well, these guys are overcharging for what it really costs to do. They have these reusable rockets, these very cheap satellites that they're able to make in bundles and just launch them up in space. And they're figuring out how to make even better rockets as they go. They're testing the new Starship rockets, which currently look like these big, like almost 1950s style, like really cool stainless steel. They're creating literally new alloys of aluminum and steel for these things and that's going to be able to launch hundreds of rockets at a time, where currently they can only do 60. So the sky is literally the limit.
That's right, pun intended there, Jeremy.
Yeah.
So when you look at technology as a driver in the marketplace, just doing a little research for our podcast today, it's interesting to see how Elon Musk and companies like that are impacting the landscape. SpaceX is a private company. We've talked about before, one way to invest in SpaceX is through the Alphabet company, which is the parent of Google. But I was reading just yesterday in prep for our talk today of how technology is changing the landscape, is that Dow Jones doesn't do this often, but they just changed 3 companies and they added 3 more. And one of those that left is Raytheon. If you think about just old contractors with the DoD, around aviation, Raytheon is a powerful company and very successful company. Now to be off to Dow Jones, and a company like Salesforce to be added, it shows you the role of technology. It shows you the importance of software, of applications, of good systems, of good process. It's exciting to think about where the marketplace is moving.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard talks of Tesla, I believe, being added to the S&P 500. So, I mean, you have these new companies that are coming in that are becoming so important to the overall landscape that they have to be added in, and you start to reevaluate these old companies. Do we really need a Boeing or a Raytheon when you've got a SpaceX that are creating these rockets for a fraction of the cost and able to launch them on schedules that are unheard of? I think we've launched more rockets in the last few years than they did since the beginnings of the space program. I mean, you have these rockets that they're able to reuse over and over. It might cost, to throw a number out there, $50 million to make a rocket or something like that. If they launch it 10 times, that costs practically nothing in comparison to what used to be a one-time use $100 million rocket. It really makes space travel actually affordable.
Yeah, it's exciting, and the ability to work in a marketplace where competition is encouraged. So you have these great ideas. You have people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos with Amazon, who created his version of SpaceX called Blue Origin,
Right.
and they compete. So you traditionally had these old school companies that were effective, Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and others that would compete for these large NASA contracts.
But they really only competed with each other, right?
That's
There
right.
wasn't really room for other people to jump in. But now, like you said, there's these new up and comers that are coming in that they're actually competing with each other more so than they used to compete with like Boeing or whatever because they're so far and above. You have SpaceX, you've got Blue Origin, you've got Virgin Galactic that are working on like more personnel travel kind of thing where you're taking these like low orbit hops and going up and being able to travel across the world very quickly.
Yeah, I often think of Virgin Atlantic, of the thought of just that entrepreneur of travel, and maybe someday having an orbiting hotel. It's just unlimited when you
Yeah.
think of the ability of putting a footprint in space. When they talk about mining asteroids, so it's exciting. But that competition piece, to have SpaceX outperform Boeing, say, in the bid for this NASA contract for, again, Doug and Bob, was it
Yes,
that
yes.
went out there to the International
Two
Space Station?
amazing astronauts right there.
And so yes, heroes. And so second place was not Boeing, it was Blue Origin. So
Yeah.
to see that competition, and Boeing was in the mix, I think they actually landed a contract as well.
Hmm.
But that competition's good. It brings new ideas, new approaches to old ideas, which is
Yeah.
always a fine thing to look at. And I can only imagine how neat that must be with Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk to just have a blank slate and say, let's do A, B, and C, and everything is open, and you can just bring ideas.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are kind of like the new titans of industry, right? Like, they're the ones that have enough money and enough say to go out there and do these impossible tasks because really no one else is going to build a rocket and go to the moon. That's such a insane notion. It's not happened in so long, but I can see it coming,
And that kind of is a great segue to where we're at today.
Yeah.
In an academic environment where you study ideas. And we want to thank Chipola College again for this opportunity to film this podcast, Tech Over Coffee, from the studio, and the importance of ideas, of studying, of math, of researching what's worked well in the past, looking at scientific principles. These are important ideas. You need that foundation, and then from that, be able to share these ideas, communicate, and have an open environment where you can leverage ideas and projects and see what will work and what can help solve initiatives or problems that might be
Yeah.
out there.
Because you can't forget, it's not just these one person teams, right? It's groups of people that all work together to make this stuff happen. And it's just like here today. It's not just me and you behind the camera doing all the work. We've got people back there that are making it happen. And so I'm very happy that Chipola College is able to foster that kind of innovation.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. As always, I enjoyed this. It's so edifying to share this podcast with you, and a great topic today. So thank you, sir.
So yeah, thank you.